Hey guys, how's it going? Srey here. So today I want to talk a bit about Falstad. Falstad is a sustained range damage dealer that can also do a lot of burst damage, and he has a lot of intricacies to him compared to other range damage dealers that they just can't compare to. So he has a lot of special things that make him Falstad. That includes global, that includes mobility, utility, and things like Gust. And he also has wave clear and a lot of damage. So he's just a really well-rounded hero. So how good is Falstad? Well, he's really strong and he's really flexible, and that's what makes him good because you can pick him early in the draft, late in the draft, and he's always pretty much always going to be good. The only thing that really lacks about Falstad is he does good damage as I said, but he lacks kind of raw damage. So if you compare him to Vala in a team fight, Vala's going to do more in a team fight than Falstad will. But Falstad has the utility in his kit. So Falstad has a global ability where he can fly anywhere on the map. Falstad can use Gust, which is a really strong utility ability, but he lacks the raw damage in fights. So if you're picking Falstad, you just want to make sure that he's not your only DPS in your team. I mean, Vala probably shouldn't be your only DPS either, but you just want to really make sure you're not kind of locked out of good damage on your team if you go Falstad. Falstad is not a hero that can be a pure hyper carry. He's going to be a hero that will supplement and give you really strong damage, but you'll always need additional damage on your team. So this video is just going to be about uh, Falstad, what he can do, kind of his brief overview of his abilities, what he can be countered by, what he's good against, what maps he's good on, and so forth. So let's first cover his abilities. So his Q is called hammering, and it throws out a hammer that returns to Falstad, dealing damage there and on the way back, and it slows enemies by 25% for 2 seconds. So the ability looks like this. You can see it does damage on the way there and the way back. So if you hit an enemy on the very tail end, if I go a little bit further back here, you can see that it'll tick really quick twice in succession, and that can be helpful to burst enemies. The slow will, if it hits the enemy twice, it'll apply the most recent effect of the slow. So you can see here, if I'm really close to the enemy, and it goes there and the way back, those two hits are a lot more spread out. So it'll apply the most recent hit for 25% for 2 seconds. So you'll actually get, if you hit the enemy both times and you're really close to them, they'll be slowed for a little bit more than 2 seconds in total, but it won't stack the slow. Lightning Rod is Falstad's W, and it deals initial damage to an enemy, and then an additional damage per second for 4 seconds while you are close to the target. So you can see if I go within range here, the range indicator is quite small, but you'll see a blue circle opens up after it that's quite a bit bigger than this kind of yellowy range. And you have to stay within that to get the additional ticks. You see 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in total. So it's the initial tick that does additional damage, and you have 4 ticks after that do slightly less damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it'll tick 5 times in total, but for 4 seconds in total. So make sure that you try to stay within the kind of blue indicator. If you break the indicator after casting it, the ability will just stop being casted and won't do any more damage. And it won't reproc when you go back in close either. It'll just break the tether. Falstad's E is barrel roll, and it dashes you in the targeted direction and grants you a shield for 3 seconds. So that's the ability. You can see the shield here isn't actually very significant. I'm at level 22, so 375 point shield at level 20 on a 14-second cooldown isn't good. So you're not really using this ability for the shield. In fact, you should really never be using it for the shield, except in very dire situations where it might save you. But again, the shield just isn't, you're not going to be using it in a fight. So if you're just, brawling a Voller or something, you're going to be using barrel to either get away, to go in, or to dodge an ability. You're not going to be using barrel roll to just absorb damage. So what you really want to be using it for is you can use it to go over walls like this. You'll also see that the sound effect is broken for whatever reason. I don't know why. And when you go over walls here, you can go over your own walls. You can go over enemy structure walls, and you can go over anything anything that you can go over more than halfway. You should be able to go over completely, if that makes sense. So if it looks like I can only go over halfway here, it'll still take me all the way over because as long as I'm more than halfway through the terrain, it'll take me over. So again, you want to use this for the utility of the movement. Don't use it for the shield. Use it for when you really need to dodge something, when you need to get out, or when you need to get in. Don't just use it because you have it available. Each of your abilities should be used for a purpose. Falstad's passive is, well, I guess he has kind of two passives. So his first passive is Tailwind. And when you're out of when you don't take damage for 6 seconds, so when you yourself don't take damage, doesn't mean if you can deal damage and it's perfectly fine. You just can't take damage. So if you don't take damage for 6 seconds, you'll gain 15% movement speed permanently until you take damage again. You can see here I have a little bit of kind of gusts near me, and that shows that I have an additional 15% movement speed. And you can see here that my movement speed is 115%. So once I take damage here, so if I go and take damage from these ogres, you'll see that I lose it once they attack me. There we go. And it goes on a 6-second cooldown. So this includes any kind of dots. So any damage over time. So like Lunara or Sylvanas. If Lunara hits me and her poison lasts for 3 seconds, then I won't have this available for 9 seconds. Uh, so just be aware of that and that you won't have the moon speed available. However, if you're just attacking and you're kiting enemies, you will have tailwind available. So if Falstad is chasing you, if you hit him with any kind of ability, he will be slowed significantly by 15%. And if you have a slow on him, that will be much more impactful than if you just hadn't used it. His other kind of passive trait is you can see he doesn't have a mount. So if I press Z, pressing Z doesn't activate a mount. Instead, it gives this little target indicator. And if you look on the mini map here, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but on the mini map, there's this very big blue circle. And since this map is so small, it's hard to see. We can see that this blue line here on the mini map moves. If I walk left here, you'll see that it moves left. So the range is quite big, but for example, you can't fly from the top of Black Hearts to the bottom of Black Hearts. You can fly from maybe the top of Black Hearts to the turn-in, or from the bottom of Black Hearts to maybe the top chest on Black Hearts Bay. So the range isn't global, but it is quite large. So when I cast, what it does is I can target a location and you can fly in, and you'll have this little indicator when you land, and this indicator becomes the enemy can see this little indicator when you're flying once you actually take flight. So once this completes here, the enemies will see this indicator and it'll show where you're landing. So if possible, you want to use it in bushes so the enemy team can't see the indicator. I think sometimes they can see it, but you want to kind of use it where the enemies just won't be completely, where they might be a little bit oblivious to it. So you don't want to just use it right in front of them, because say Malfurion could root that little indicator so that when you land, you're instantly rooted and you might die. So this flight is the most complicated part of Falstad's kit. It has a 55-second cooldown, and it is the most important part of Falstad's kit by far. So being a good Falstad player, the two most important things, we'll talk about it more in a second, but Mighty Gust at level 10 and Flight, your trait. So these are the two most important parts of Falstad's kit, and the Flight is not easy to use. So there's a lot of reasons you might want to use it. So Falstad is the only ranged hero that has a global in the game, at least at the moment. There are other heroes. Dahaka has dig. He can dig in bushes. That's a global. Brightwing has a global. Can teleport anywhere. ETC has a global. Stage dive, and several other heroes have kind of versions of globals as well. And Falstad is the only one that is a ranged hero, though, is only ranged DPS. So with Falstad, if you ever have a global on your team, if you have one at least, you want to make sure that global is always soloing from at least the midpoint in the game. So what I mean by that is if you have 3 lanes, you want Falstad in a lane by himself. Okay, and the reason for that is the enemy team will always have to match, right? The enemy team also wants 3 lanes soaked. So if they have no globals and your team has a Falstad, right, and they put, let's say, Artanis top lane, okay? So they put Artanis top lane on Infernal Shrines, and the bottom shrine pops up, okay? And you're pushing top with Falstad, you can fly to your team, and if your team's contesting it and it's a 4v4, you can make that a 5v4 because Artanis cannot rotate as quickly. So you can use the global to pressure a lane and prevent the enemy team from and getting advantage in team fights in terms of numbers. So the enemy team always has to worry about, because the enemy team can't just send Artanis to always match Falstad and Soak, because if the enemy team sends Artanis, you just use Flight with Falstad and force the fight. And you can force the fight really, really well with Gust at level 10. So you can force the fight with Flight. You can gank an enemy hero. So say on Tomb of the Spider Queen, you have Falstad. Flight's usually not that good, right, on that map because it's so small. But I mean on any map, but on Tomb of the Spider Queen as well. If you're playing mid top lane and then you have one person bot, and the enemy team has one person bot, you can fly bot and get a really easy gank if the enemy overextends whatsoever. So you can use it as a ganking tool. You can use it to escape. If the one you're actually flying, 99% sure you're actually immune to damage. I forgot to check it, but when you're actually in this animation, you can't be killed. Um, but when you're casting this, as long as you can take damage, as long as you aren't stunned or rooted or polymorphed or something like that, you can use it to escape a gank. So let's say there's 3 people coming to get you. You've eaten this bush and you get ready to fly, and you can fly away and completely dodge the gank altogether. You can use it while laning, say on Dragonshire if you're top lane and you get poked out really hard. Well, just fly back to base instead of tapping. Or if you have no tap available, then you can just fly back. So flight has a lot of uses, and knowing when to use it correctly is really, really important. I cannot stress it enough. I do a lot of coaching and going over replays, and a lot of people, for whatever reason, like playing Falstad. I mean, he's a really great hero, so I guess it's not that weird. But the number one thing is the players don't know. Well, it's 2 things. I'll go over the second in a moment, but it's not knowing how to use Flight and Gust, and then not knowing how to auto attack correctly on Falstad. So a huge part of Falstad's kit isn't his abilities in terms of damage, it's auto attacks. Okay. Falstad's auto attacks do the majority of his damage. So I just want to show you something really quickly. So I don't have any talents right now. Untalented. But let me show you a Q and a W on this target dummy without auto attacking it. Okay. So 1422. Okay. Now I'm going to do full auto attacks in the time that lightning rod procs. So 1422 is the damage. Okay. 2791. So from 1492 to 2791. That's how much of your damage comes from auto attacks. And remember that you can auto attack when your abilities aren't even available, right? So your abilities are going to go on a 10 to 15 second cooldown in terms of damage. Maybe less with talents, but 10 to 15 seconds, and you can always auto attack outside of that. So the vast majority of your damage comes from auto attacks. I cannot stand it when I watch Falstad players just Q and just like run away, or they'll just Q, W, run away, or maybe just even W. You have to use your auto attacks on Falstad, or you shouldn't play Falstad. So much of his damage comes from it, and if maybe you're playing Falstad or you're playing another hero in the game, and you're wondering why your damage is so low. Maybe you saw someone else play a hero, and you're like, wow, how did that person get so much damage? I was using my abilities off of cooldown, and they doubled my damage. If that's you, you're not using auto attacks. A lot of damage from every hero in the game, even Jaina, a lot of her damage comes from basic attacks. Jaina and KT do the least amount of basic attacks from basic attacks in the game, but their basic attacks still contribute to their overall DPS. Maybe not burst, but sustained damage. Like on Vala, if you're just using multi-shot and Hungering Arrow on Vala, you are completely lacking in damage on that hero. A lot of heroes in the game rely on auto attacks, including supports, including tanks. Did you know Morales has one of the highest auto attacks in the game, at least for supports? So make sure, even if it doesn't feel like you're doing much, use your auto attacks, especially on Falstad. Okay, that's my little rant about that. So let's go over talents. So level 1, Falstad, you have Gathering Storm here, which every time a hammering hits a hero increases its damage by 1.5. So if you hit one hero on the way there, on the way back, you can stack it to 3 damage, okay? Seasoned Marksman, which blah blah blah, you stack it, and once you gain up to 40, once you gain 40 bonus attack damage, you can unlock it, so you can gain 40% attack speed for 3 seconds, 60-second cooldown, really strong. And it can keep stacking afterwards as well. And then Wingman. So enemy minions killed near Falstad grant a stack of bribe. Once you get 20 stacks, you can bribe a mercenary camp. So that means you basically insta-kill one mercenary, okay? You don't kill the whole camp. So 20 stacks bribes one mercenary. And every time you bribe a mercenary as well, you also gain permanently 5% damage on lightning rod. Okay, so that doesn't work on bosses, and you can hold up to 80 stacks. So, talk about Wingman really quick. This is better on maps where, one, there's a lot of minions, okay? We're going to be soaking a lot of minions to gain a lot of stacks because you're going to need a lot of minions to use them. And two, where there's good mercenaries to bribe. So you don't want to be bribing night camps, okay? So this camp over here has 4 minions, okay? You This camp takes twice as many bribe stacks as this one, okay? This one you can fly to, you just bribe, and then they'll die, and you can insta-cap it. You don't want to be using, you can bribe twice as much if you're bribing siege camps, at least these ogre camps. It also works really well in the shaman camp where they have the 2 little wolves and the shaman, because if If you bribe the big shaman, it's really, really easy to kill the 2 wolves. So you want to be using it effectively versus some mercenary camps. So on Garden of Terror, it's really good because you're soaking a lot of minions. It's a really good map for globals, and they have 2 siege camps on either side of the map. So there's 4 in total. So there's a lot of stuff to bribe. So Wingman on that map is really, really good. Gathering Storm. Okay, let's go over Seasoned Marksman next. Seasoned Marksman is what you want to take on maps that have a ton of minions, and there aren't really that good bribe targets. So like on Dragonshire, there's no bribe targets, okay? And there's a lot of minions because you're usually double soaking if you rotate mid-bot. So you're going to get a lot of minions, but there isn't a lot of good bribe targets. So Seasoned Marksman is going to be a good option. Okay, so regardless of the build that you go later in the game, these talents are irrelevant of the build you're going to go later in the game, okay? For the most part. So don't think that taking one of these talents kind of directs you to what talents you should take. These are irrelevant. Since you should be doing a lot of Falstad damage on Falstad, even if you go in a more ability centered build, a lot of your damage still comes from auto attacks. So if you go Seasoned Marksman and you go more of a mage build, you're still auto attacking targets, or you should be. So you don't lose any damage by not like if you think you should have gone Gathering Storm. So basically what I'm saying is if there's a lot of minions, you're soaking a lot of minions, and there's a lot of camps to bribe, go Wingman. If you're soaking a lot of minions and there are no camps to bribe, go Seasoned Marksman. If neither of those are true, go Gathering Storm. So Gathering Storm used to be a little bit stronger than this, but it doesn't give you that many stacks. So you're gonna get, if you hit an enemy twice with it, it gives you 3 damage on your Q, and that's gonna be an additional 3 damage on the way there and on the way back. So you gain 6 damage in total when you hit an enemy. You basically, if you hit an enemy twice, you multiply it by twice, and that's how much damage you'll do in total on the next hammering. And it just doesn't do that much damage. And sometimes it might encourage you to use your hammering just to stack it instead of to do kind of critical damage or important damage that actually means something. Instead of just using it. Personally, I don't like Gathering Storm. Sometimes I'll go it if I there's nothing to stack, and if Wingman isn't a good option, like on Battlefield of Eternity, for example, or on Rax's Holdout, where there's not a lot of minions to stack and you're always fighting the enemy team, Gathering Storm can be a good option. But generally, I don't like it. So most of the time, I'll go Wingman or Seasoned Marksman. Okay, Static Shield, Updraft, and Hammer Gains. So Static Shield is the better option if the enemy team has a bit more burst damage, and if you can't really, it's a game where it's more dangerous to get auto attacks in. Okay, Hammer Gains is the better option otherwise. So Hammer Gains basically gives you 20% lifesteal, so you heal for 20% of the damage you do with auto attacks, and Static Shield gives you a 20% shield in total. So each of these stack, and it's pretty good versus heroes that will threaten you. So if you're against like a Kerrigan or something and you're not going to get the overtime value of Hammer Gains, again, you can go Static Shield. Updraft increases the barrel roll range, shield amount, and shield duration by 40%. So the shield duration part doesn't matter because the shield's too low to be able to survive anyway. 40% shield increase is fairly nice, but the problem is that the shield, so if I show you the shield range or the updraft range here increase, actually really, really far. So oftentimes it'll actually barrel roll you too far away. This is really, really far barrel roll. And if you want to E into a fight, it'll often put you too far in a kind of a bad position. And if you want to E out of a fight, you usually don't want to just completely remove yourself from the fight. You just want to give yourself better positioning. So the range increase is actually a negative a lot of the time. So most of the time you're going to go Hammer Gains. Hammer Gains also allows you to do Merc camps more effectively. It allows you to solo more effectively because you have that kind of self-sustain. And with Barrel Roll, keep in mind that you can be interrupted when using it. So you're not unstoppable or anything like that. You can be rooted through it or you can be stunned to stop yourself halfway or something. Okay, so at level 7 we have Secret Weapon, which increases the range of hammering by 30%, and basic attacks deal 60% bonus damage while hammering is in flight. Boomerang, you can reactivate hammering to deal an additional 362 damage around the hammer, and charged up increases the number of lightning rod strikes from 2 or by 2, and the range increased by 25. So you're always going to go boomerang here. And the reason for this is Falstad's wave clear sucks, and having wave clear on a global hero is extremely important and extremely strong. And this is because the more you can slip push, the more effective your global will be. And Boomerang drastically increases your wave clear. So let's toggle minions here. This is level 7 is also considered a power spike for Falstad because of this. So without, Arthur's just going to play with me here. So this is my wave clear without that ability. Okay. Maybe I could have cleared it a little bit quicker, maybe not. So let's take boomerang now and see how fast we can clear. Okay, you can see that I can clear it kind of a lot quicker. I also started that a little bit quicker, but you kind of get the idea. You have a lot more wave clear with boomerang. Secret weapon, the range increase means that the hammering will be gone for longer, so you'll also be able to get more auto attacks in than you would otherwise. Um, However, the boomerang effect and just being able to burst a target a lot quicker, and this basically does almost half health to squishy targets. If you hit them with both procs of hammering plus the boomerang proc, it'll do almost half health. Charged up takes way too much kind of sustain. Charged up feels like a worse version of secret weapon. Boomerang, just the wave clear is far too important, and the burst damage is really strong. Plus, it goes well with the build later on. So even if you go seasoned marksman, you can still go boomerang. Level 10, this is an easy choice. So Hinterland Blast is probably the worst heroic in the game, I want to say, and there's a few reasons for that. So one, it costs a ridiculous amount of mana. That's not really important, but it's 100 mana is kind of ridiculous. The second thing is the cooldown is 120 seconds. So if Hinterland Blast had a 70-second cooldown or something, it would be pickable or probably even good. But a 120-second cooldown is shared by like Mosh Pit and Lava Wave, and that might be it. Maybe one more ability. So you have to have a really, really impactful ability to have a 120-second cooldown. And Hinterland Blast does, at base damage, it does 19 more damage than Nova's Precision Strike. Nova's Precision Strike is easier to hit. You'll often hit more targets with it, and it has unlimited range. And it's a 60-second cooldown. Okay, it's literally half the cooldown and does about the same damage, and it's better. So Hinterland Blast is shit. Mighty Gust, on the other hand, is really, really strong. It is a 60-second cooldown, and what it does is it pushes enemies away and then slows their movement speed by 40%, decaying over 40 seconds. So basically it looks like this, and this is useful for a lot of reasons. So there are a ton of reasons or a ton of ways to use Mighty Gust. So if like Hinterland's Blast, what do you use it for? You use it to kill a target, right? Use it to do damage. But this is utility. This can be used for a ton of things. You can use it to gust enemies into your team. You can use it to gust enemies away from your team. You can use it to split a team. You can use it to gust a single target into your team. You can use it to gust an enemy team out of position. You can use it to gust an enemy team off of boss. You can use it to gust an enemy team off of a Punisher push when they're pushing in, and then you can burn the Punisher. You can use it to push enemies into Void Prison, or push them into Malfurion Root, or you can use it to push them into Earthquake, or you can use it to push them into the Towers of Doom towers, so they take like unlimited damage when they're pushing, or push them into a fort. So there are a million ways you can use Mighty Gust, and once you gust, they will also be slowed by a significant amount for 4 seconds. It is a decaying slow, so it's not as good as just a flat slow. Decaying means that at it's over 4 seconds. So after 1 second, it'll be 30%. After 2 seconds, it'll be 20%. After 3 seconds, it'll be 10%. So it decays like that. The other thing that you should note is it doesn't matter if I'm standing right beside um, or completely at max range here, they're going to go the exact same distance. So if I go all the way over here, so even though I'm this far away, it's still going to push the target the same distance. The target will always get pushed the same distance regardless of your distance to them. So an important thing or way that you want to use Mighty Gust as well is that you can barrel roll and then gust to get in better position. You can barrel roll from behind a wall, get a better position. You can fly behind the enemy team to get a better position and then gust. And you can just gust normally. So using gust takes a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge and a lot of practice. So if you feel like it's not really doing anything, I promise you it is really strong heroic. You just need to get used to it. Okay, level 13, we have Thunder Strikes. So Lightning Rod does 20% more damage each subsequent strike. Flow Rider, which your abilities recharge 100% faster while Tailwind is active, and Giant Killer, which you do 1.5% of the target's max health. Okay, so in this meta where the enemy team usually has a ton of tanks, you'll want to go Giant Killer. If the enemy team doesn't have a ton of tanks, I'm talking about like 3 tanks or something, at least 3 frontline, you want to go Flow Rider. And Flow Rider reduces the cooldown of hammering from 10 to 5, from lightning rod from 15 to 7.5, and barrel roll from 14 to 7. So that's a huge, substantial amount of cooldown reduction. You might say, well, 6 seconds is a really long time. Yes, it is. But you can also get airy gusts at 16, reduces the cooldown activation from 6 to 3. So you will get a lot of ability recharge time from Flow Rider. So unless the enemy team has a lot of tanks, you can go Giant Killer. But in every other case, the most of the time, just go Flow Rider. It is a very strong ability that will significantly give you more damage and more utility. It's going to give you more effective damage than Thunder Strikes as well. And you can also, with Flow Rider, you can basically Q W a target and then reset, and then if you're poking in that kind of way, say a team that's a little bit more scary that you don't want to auto attack as much, you can get your poke up a lot faster. So if you go Flow Rider, you always want to go Airy Gusts. If you go Giant Killer, maybe I should go Airy Gust. So Airy Gust reduces the activation time from 6 to 3 and increases the movement speed bonus from 15 to 25. So you move a lot faster, and you move more faster. You move a lot faster more often. If you went Giant Killer, you can go Crippling Hammer or Afterburn. So Afterburner increases the your movement speed by 60% for 3 seconds when you use Barrel Roll, and Crippling Hammer increases the slow from 25 to 50%. So 50% slow is actually very substantial. Most of the time, you're going to go Afterburner just for the safety for yourself. But Crippling Slow, so I would go Crippling Slow if the enemy team has a lot of frontline, and you went Giant Killer, but they don't have a lot of engage. And I would go Afterburner if they have a lot of frontline and they have a lot of engage. So we'll go Airy Gust here. So at level 20, we have Call of the Wild Hammer, which is just, let's not talk about that. Wind Tunnel creates a wind tunnel for 4 seconds. Enemies caught in the tunnel will be pushed back periodically. So it basically just completely recasts Mighty Gust for 4 seconds. Nexus Frenzy, which increases your attack range and increases your attack speed by 20%. And Epic Mount, which reduces the cooldown of flight to 30 seconds, reduces the cost or the time before flying by 0.5 seconds, and increases the speed by 50%. It also doesn't mention it, but you see this little cast indicator once you fly. That is removed with Epic Mount. I don't know why it doesn't say here, but it's been a tool to bug for a while. That little cast indicator is removed as well. So most of the time, you're going to go Epic Mount. So I'm going to show you Wind Tunnel just really quick here to show you kind of what it does. And this can be a useful talent in some situations. And those situations would be um, very situational, where if the game completely depends on a boss cap and you need to make sure you get the boss cap, you take this, or maybe on Towers of Doom, where the last cap will win the game. So you might just need to push enemy team away to get the last cap. But it basically just looks like this, and it'll just keep casting it for 4 seconds. These mercenaries are just immune to it for some reason. Okay, and the actual talent that you should get is Epic Flight, or Epic Mount. And let's compare flight time here. So I'm going to fly down here. Also shows the indicator. And with Epic Mount, the flight looks like this. So that is a huge difference. So being able to fly and then gust the enemy team away without an indicator will win you games. Just having the reduced cooldown on flight as well, so a reduced cooldown to 30 seconds, so 25 per second less cooldown, is very, very strong as well. And yeah, so my tips for playing Falstad would be he's great on any map. He's definitely better on maps where globals are more important, so Sky Temple, Cursed Hollow, Infernal Shrines, Blackheart's Bay, Garden of Terror, and quite a few others. He's still good on small maps like on Dragon Chart, his flight is really good as well, but he's still good on small maps like Brax's Holdout, Tomb of the Spider Queen, and Battlefield of Eternity. I wouldn't shy away with him just because of that. But there might be other heroes that would be better in those situations. Of course, there might always be a better hero in any situation than Falstad, but Falstad is a very flexible hero, and you're not going to go wrong by picking Falstad. If you're trying to play kind of against the Falstad doesn't really have kind of a single hard counter, although Zeratul will really, really mess with him. Because he has no kind of really self-peel for himself, and Zeratul will out-damage him in a 1v1. You have to be really careful when split pushing on Falstad because you don't want a Zeratul to get on you because you're probably just dead. And Zeratul can also Vorpal to anywhere you fly if you give him a free ride. In terms of comps I wouldn't want to play him against, comps that have a lot of poke, so he's not the best hero versus uh, if you can't get in range to auto attack, then you're not going to be very effective on Falstad. So that means the enemy team has a lot of poke or a lot of threat. You might want to shy away from Falstad, but at the same time, if you can get a good gust on that team, then the tables might be turned. And if in doubt with Falstad, just take away this. If you don't think Falstad is good versus their team, just use your global. Your global will always overcome any threat they have in the enemy team, unless they have 3 globals. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. As always, I will talk to you next time.